Definitely heard the story. 10 years of a grueling, bloody siege, finally brought to an end by a brilliant, deceitful wooden horse that brought a mighty city straight to its knees. It's legendary, but how much of that epic tale is actual verified history, and how much is just thousands of years of really creative storytelling? Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to unpack the ancient texts, dig into the archaeological evidence, and explore some wild modern theories to uncover the real story behind what happened at Troy.
Okay, let's just jump right into this because the reality of the Trojan horse might completely shatter everything you thought you knew. For literally centuries, this wooden beast has stood as the ultimate symbol of cunning and deception. But when we actually look at the physical evidence and really closely read the ancient Greek and Roman texts, we start to realize that this iconic image might be masking a very different, but honestly equally fascinating historical truth.
To start off, we have to ground ourselves in the classic myth that we get from ancient writers like Virgil and Homer. You know the drill. The Greeks pretend to sail home, leaving behind a massive wooden horse on the beach. The Trojans are completely bewildered. A priest named Laocoon sees right through it, calls it a trap, and begs his people to destroy it. But then, and this is where it gets incredibly dramatic, Virgil tells us two monstrous snakes slither out of the sea and literally strangle Laocoon to death. The Trojans take this gruesome scene as a divine sign, a punishment for his sacrilege, and they wield a massive beast right through their own front doors. According to those ancient texts, this hollow marvel was built by a giant of a Greek soldier named Epeius, and the level of detail the ancient writers give us, it's absolutely astonishing. Epeius reportedly used heavy timber from Mount Ida. He equipped the horse with wheels so it could be dragged with flax ropes. It supposedly even had flexible knees, a movable tail, and shifting eyes. Oh, and to keep the guys inside safe, Epeius engineered a special catch on the trapdoor that literally only he knew how to undo. I mean, it sounds like an absolute mechanical marvel. But here is where things start to get kinda messy. As we look closer at the sources, cracks begin to appear in the myth, starting with wildly conflicting accounts of how many Greek soldiers actually fit inside the thing. The ancient authors simply couldn't agree. Some say 30 brave fighters, including Odysseus, were huddled in the dark. Others say 50. Some push the number all the way up to 100 heavily armed men. Get this. One ancient source actually claims there were 3,000 men crammed in there, which is almost certainly a hilarious historical mistake. Just picture the logistics of that for a second. 3,000 men trying to fit inside a wooden statue that still had to physically pass through the gates of a city. It's completely impossible, but it perfectly shows how the myth just grew larger and larger with every single retelling. And think about the stealth factor here, or, the complete lack of it. Imagine the physical reality of stuffing dozens of Greek warriors clad in full bronze armor into a hollow wooden box on wheels. The ancient evidence actually points out that rattling sounds emerged from within the horse when it was moved, caused by all those weapons and armor clanking together. Imagine the ridiculous noise as the Trojans dragged it over the uneven ground. Not exactly a highly covert stealth operation, right? And that right there perfectly illustrates our biggest problem. There's a massive 500-year gap between the actual fall of Troy and when Homer finally wrote about it. That gives facts plenty of time to snowball into wild legend. The destruction of the city likely happened somewhere between 1275 and 1260 BC, but Homer didn't compose his epics until around 750 BC. That is 5 centuries of a giant ancient game of telephone, where a real historical event was embellished over and over by generations of storytellers. So, to find out what really happened, we have to fast forward to 1873. That's when a German businessman and pioneering archaeologist named Heinrich Schliemann made a discovery that absolutely shocked the world. Following the geographical clues hidden in Homer's Iliad, Schliemann excavated a site in modern-day Turkey called Hisarlik and found the real physical ruins of a massive ancient metropolis. Basically, he proved that Troy was real. The ruins absolutely proved that Troy fell right around the exact time the myth said it did. But moving beyond the storybooks, the physical evidence leaves us with a massive historical mystery. The walls of this ancient city show clear signs of heavy damage dating to that period. However, archaeologists are deeply divided. Was this destruction the result of a brutal siege by Greek armies? Or was it a natural disaster? This ambiguity has sparked several major, rival theories about what the horse actually was. Let's move to our first major theory. Could the wooden horse simply be a highly embellished memory of a siege tower or a battering ram? We have to remember, this was a war fought against incredibly thick, heavily fortified walls. It actually makes perfect sense. Imagine a massive wooden siege engine, covered in damp animal hides to protect the soldiers inside from flaming arrows, being used to smash through the gates of Troy. Over 500 years of oral tradition, it is incredibly easy to see how a wooden beast of war holding men in its belly slowly evolved in the retelling into a literal wooden horse.
But what if it wasn't a weapon at all? What if it was a devastating act of nature? Because the damage to those ancient walls at Hisarlik doesn't just look like it was caused by men swinging a battering ram, it looks remarkably like seismic damage.
Back in the 1930s, an American archaeologist named Carl Blegen carried out extensive excavations and argued forcefully that a massive earthquake actually brought down the city, allowing the Greeks to finally walk in and conquer it. Now, you might be wondering, why a horse then? Well, the ancient Greek god of earthquakes was Poseidon, and Poseidon's sacred animal, his absolute primary symbol, was the horse. So saying a horse destroyed the impregnable walls of Troy might literally just have been ancient shorthand for Poseidon sent a massive earthquake.
Or, and hear me out on this one, is it possible this entire 3,000-year-old epic was caused by a simple translation error? What if the men really did hide inside a wooden structure, but we've just been picturing the wrong one all along? Recently, an Italian naval archaeologist named Francesco Taboni put forward a really fascinating claim. He argues that the Greeks actually hid in a specific type of Phoenician cargo boat known for its broad hull, not a giant wooden statue. These ships were incredibly common in the ancient Mediterranean at the time. Because here's the really crucial detail. Ancient writers constantly used horse metaphors to describe ships. Homer literally refers to ships as the horses of the deep, and the later Greek playwright Euripides directly compares the Trojan horse to the dark hull of a ship. This makes a mistranslation over the centuries incredibly likely. I mean, let's be honest, the Greeks hiding in the hull of a beached ship sounds a whole lot more plausible than a hollow statue with flexible knees, right?
And hilariously enough, even Hollywood accidentally backed this theory up. For the 2004 blockbuster movie Troy with Brad Pitt, the production designers built their massive wooden horse prop entirely out of the keels and hulls of old boats. You can actually still see this exact prop today, sitting right in a public square in the city of Çanakkale, Turkey, just a stone's throw from the real ruins of Troy.
But wait, what if we're taking this whole story way too literally? What if the horse wasn't a physical object that hid men at all? Not a statue, not a battering ram, not a ship, but rather a profound psychological metaphor representing the war itself.
To really grasp this, you have to put yourself in the mindset of the late Bronze Age. Horses were the ultimate symbol of immense wealth, status, and military power. They were the ancient equivalent of a fleet of supercars. They pulled the chariots that absolutely dominated the battlefield, and the Trojans themselves were deeply fundamentally tied to them. Homer repeatedly refers to the Trojans by the very specific title Tamers of Horses, and a ton of Trojan characters actually had names derived from the Greek word for horse.
So, the Greeks leaving a horse, supposedly as a peace offering to Athena, who was the goddess of wisdom, warfare, and the technical mastery of horses, was a deeply calculated move. It was the ultimate deceptive subversion of Troy's own proudest cultural symbol. It wasn't just a wooden box, it was a psychological weapon designed to perfectly exploit the Trojans' reverence for horses and the gods. In fact, this concept of a malicious attack disguised as a benign gift is so universally brilliant that thousands of years later, we literally use the exact same term, a Trojan horse, to describe computer malware that tricks you into downloading a hidden virus.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to take this thought away with you. We may never know exactly what passed through the gates of Troy over 3,000 years ago. But whether the Trojan horse was a misunderstood Phoenician boat, a wooden battering ram, the rumblings of a massive earthquake, or simply a brilliant poetic metaphor that inspired modern cybersecurity, its legacy is absolutely undeniable. It forces us to step back and ask, if the greatest trick in military history was just a beautiful illusion, how much of the rest of our history is built on a simple misunderstanding? Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep questioning the stories you've been told, and I'll see you in the next explainer.